Hi everyone. So today we're going to be taking a look at how you make a floating 3D block. This is what the finished product is going to look like a little bit, and it's supposed to indicate as if the block is floating off the sheet of paper. Essentially what it is using what we learned about the Titanic video, about using a little bit of perspective and forced perspective to make it appear as if this is actually floating. Okay, the block is actually floating here. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to start off with a regular white sheet of paper. Now you'll need some scissors for this because we are going to do some cutting afterwards, but it should be fairly straightforward. Now there are a lot of videos on YouTube with this, and I encourage you to take a look at some other ones. They're usually in time lapse, so when they are, you see somebody shading in things fairly quickly. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this in real time with you so that you can kind of see what it would look like. Okay, so what I do is that I'm having my paper the portrait way, and it looks like this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see specifically what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start off with the top of the block. The top of the block looks like this, and so I'm going to be putting points at each side, and I'm going to make a diamond in this fashion. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have a small dot here, 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 and here. Okay, and I'm going to connect the dots with some straight lines in this fashion. And that's going to be the top of our block. After that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be using like the lines of perspective. They're not going to come straight down, but they're going to come down a little bit towards like a vanishing point. Remember, we talked about a vanishing point is where the lines are going to end up. Okay, so if I put a vanishing point here and I start from the corner of each one of the blocks and come down this way, you're going to begin to see how this block starts to get formed a little bit. So I'm just going to follow these perspective lines this way. This is going to look fairly severe, I think, but I don't know. This way. And once I have that in place, using the vanishing point and having my guidelines going to the vanishing point, almost like rays of the sun coming out of the vanishing point, I then can erase this vanishing point, get rid of that, and begin to shade the block in just a little bit. And so what we'll do is that we'll shade using the flat side of the pencil, a little bit this on this side, which will be a little bit darker this way. And I'm going fairly quickly just so that you can see it. In the time-lapse photographs, you'll see some very delicate shading, very nicely done. I'll smudge it with my finger like this, just to blur out some of the lines. This side is going to be darker than this side. I'm going to make this side a little bit darker. This side is going to be darker than this side. And the way I'm going to keep this side a little bit lighter is by using a lighter touch and slowing my pencil down a little bit. Okay? I'm going to try to make sure that this side is going to be darker than that one by going over this area a little bit more this way. Okay? Now, the top here, I'll just fill in a little bit of the on the top, like that. Okay? Just a little, just to give it a little bit of an effect. Now, once that is done, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get a space underneath this block, and I'm going to make an upside down V to sort of indicate where the shadow is going to be. And I'm going to have the upside down V like that. I did it kind of faint so that we can see it. And then I'm going to just sort of fill in from the corner, and I'm going to make the shadow this way. But the shadow is going to fade out into the paper. Okay? So I'm going to make this corner part the darkest, and it's going to fade into the paper. And so I'll just take my finger and smudge it a little bit so I get that graying over here to make it look as if it's fading into the paper. And we want to make it look sharp, because the shadows are not by any means crooked. Okay, so now as we have this shadow here, I might make it a little more like this, give it more of a square shape. Remember, we're trying to make it seem as if this block is casting a shadow on the paper. Then we should have something that looks a little bit like this. Now, in order to make sure that it really looks as if it's floating against the backdrop, we're going to cut it. We're going to cut the paper here, all the way around the edge of the block, and here this way. Okay? So, as we cut it, we now should have the image or the effect that it would look as if it were floating off of the tabletop. And if we did it right, hopefully it'll look that way. Give me a minute while I cut this. And there's your floating block. Okay? Give it a try. If you want to use a ruler, you may. But experiment with it. It can be kind of fun. Okay? Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you soon.